Arlington Independent Media. But before we do that, I just will call the meeting to order. And is there any public comment before we move to our first agenda? Hearing none. Lynn and Gary, so delighted that you're here with us. Because it's been a while since we got an update on AIM, and Frank and I have met with you way back when you could meet at Bayou Bakery, just before I think the shutdown, the lockdown. So we're so delighted that you could you could be with us at least virtually, and we will usually what we do. The format is that we have you all say, opening comments and then open it up for questions. And on our side, Tech Commission members, if you could just introduce yourselves before you ask a question, that'd be great, just to give Lynn and Gary a context. Thanks so much. Over to you all.
Thank you both. I'm Lynn Borton. I'm president of AIM's board. Gary is a longtime director, is actually one of the county appointees to our board, and might be the person responsible for talking me into taking the chair a year and a half ago. But actually, Gary is going to sort of take the driver's seat this evening. I'm going to play co-pilot and fill in some blanks as necessary. But we're really excited about sort of telling you what we've been up to. And it's certainly been a year since we sat together at Bayou Bakery and planned to have you all come and tour AIM a year ago at about this time. So Gary, you want to introduce yourself and get started, and let me know where you need me to pipe up. Oh,
Gary, you don't have audio. We saw him come on.
Looks like he's on mute.
I love the cup that says you're on mute. That's excellent. Well, since he may be having difficulty, Lynn, do you want to just start?
Yep, I'll start, and we'll just. This is very much in the AIM way that when one thing doesn't work, you just flip roles. Good teamwork. So I don't know what everyone on the call knows of AIM. So forgive me if I give you a little bit of information that you might already have, erring on the side of those who may not be familiar with AIM. So we are the P in the PEG of the public education and government money coming out of the cable franchise. Our mission is to promote and facilitate free speech by providing access to both established and emerging media. And that's changed over the tenure of AIM's history, as you might imagine. We try to build the Arlington community by bringing independent voices together to exchange ideas, opinions, artistic expression, and that feels especially important to create opportunities for underrepresented voices to be heard, which is one way that we really feel that we can support some of the county's priorities, particularly now. We're kind of a soup to nuts operation. We offer everything from introductory classes to professional level master classes to sort of the individual produced things to professional productions. So we provide training, facilities, and dissemination networks for those locally produced, personally relevant, and wholly independent media. So we like to say that we make people into producers, not just consumers of media. So we educate people about media's power and how to leverage that power for independent purposes. That feels especially important now to have independent media. And we're kind of this cool intersection of technology, art, and civic engagement. Gary, I see you're with us. Do you want to pick up or do you want me to keep going?
I don't know where you are. I'll
okay.
jump in as soon as I know where you are. Okay. Hi, folks. How are you?
So I will say that over our years of activity, we have garnered probably more, we were trying to do this count just the other day, probably more than 30 national awards for AIM and AIM member productions. And I will say that we have another one coming that we're not allowed to talk about. So that's kind of exciting. AIM was founded in October 1982, and we were the cable franchise agreement public access TV station. Since then, we've added a low power FM station in December of 2015. That's WERA. And we have all of our programming streaming online. We have YouTube channels. We've had the Rosebud Film Festival. Our facilities include a TV studio and control room, a radio broadcast booth, an audio production suite, various editing rooms, a digital classroom, meeting spaces, and actually a huge archive of Arlington's documentary history. And if you know somebody that wants to help us figure out a good way to make use of that going forward, let us know. And then a lot of field equipment for lease and use by our members. So we are a membership organization, which means that people get trained and then they have, they're available, or they're certified then to be able to take class to, to use the equipment, rent equipment, use the facilities, etc. A majority of our funding has historically come from the county. We are working to enlarge and diversify that funding base. And in the last couple of years, we have been operating under a kind of 5% step down that was developed in recognition of the declining cable franchise revenues that the state and the county were receiving. And for the last couple of years, our money was actually split between operating budget and additional funds that the county board would put in as one-time funds. This year, we were delighted that those funds were reunited and that it sort of opened a conversation about maybe the way that AIM's funding has been figured out in recent years doesn't make the most sense going forward, and that we ought to disentangle the allocations for AIM from the cable revenues and have it more a reflection of the value that the county board and the county staff see on what AIM contributes to the community. So in this fiscal year, the board just approved the budget. It's a little over $380,000 in fiscal year 22 that's been allocated. And then we have additional funding streams. The biggest comes from, in a typical year, would come from our classes and our wildly popular summer camps, from commercial clients, studio fees, membership, and increasingly from individual donations. In fact, we have just launched our spring fund drive. I want to invite you all to our first ever virtual gala, which is tomorrow night. We're also doing a 2-night local music event called Coachella. We have an online auction and a fund drive. So I want to go back actually to that question of value, because I think that's what drew me to AIM and has really kept me involved and engaged, that we offer, as Christian Dorsey said in his really wonderful clip for tomorrow night's gala, it's like worth the price of admission right there, that AIM really offers something quite unique that's not available anywhere else in the county, that we're a convener of conversations. We provide a level of support and technical assistance in the nonprofit community. We do workforce development, and we tell the story of our community from a lot of different perspectives, which is kind of what you hope technology allows you to do. So since our founding, we've had probably more than 15,000 programs on our various channels. I don't know that anybody's got really reliable data on this, but I would guess maybe 20% have been in languages other than English, including Vietnamese, Farsi, Amharic, Spanish, Arabic, Korean. We have a TV show that goes now for the Mongolian community in Arlington, which particularly in the pandemic has been a nice way for people to stay connected when they might not otherwise. And producers really try to explore issues that matter to the Arlington community and might not get coverage in mainstream media. And I want to talk a little bit about actually the critical resource that we've been to the nonprofit community, because in COVID, I think that has been particularly true. A year ago, we did close our doors, March of 2020, like everybody else. We've kind of shut down and thought maybe this was going to be brief, and it obviously hasn't. We have been able to use the TV studio on a limited basis, but not the radio booth, not the audio production suite. We are looking to reopen, at least in some level, sooner rather than later. It's everybody get their vaccine and follow good protocols. That gets easier for us to think about. But one of our commitments this year has been to continue to really try to serve the nonprofit community. And I just want to run down a list of things that we've been doing, because I think it really is illustrative of kind of the scope of how AIM has really tried to show up in the community. We worked with the Community Progress Network, providing training in remote audio production for storytelling and interview skills for safety net providers. So that included the Arlington Free Clinic, APA, Edufutura, AFAC, so that they could record stories of their clients during COVID and use that for kind of sharing what their work was. We did the videography for the Arlington Free Clinic's virtual gala. In partnership with the Arlington Historical Society, we launched On This Date series with a special focus on Arlington's history, but largely unknown Black history with the Black Heritage Museum of Arlington. This is one of my favorite things that we've done this year. You can hear it on WERA daily at 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., so I encourage you to check in. We've been working with Challenging Racism to produce content, more to come in terms of the county's equity initiative. We provided training to members of the staff and board of the Arlington County Fair to help them make the fair virtual this summer. We've been talking with Arlington's NAACP about producing their own series. We worked with, among others, the Church of Clarendon and the Central United Methodist Church to provide technical advice and consulting to support their streaming their worship services. And we did several things in support of Arlington Arts by live streaming the Lubber Run Summer Concert Series, Clarendon Day, the Columbia Pike Blues Festival. So we've been really happy that where we could kind of make life in Arlington feel as normal as it might. Kind of drawing the curtain back, our biggest challenge right now is location. We currently occupy about 7,000 square feet in Clarendon. We look forward to having you visit. Hopefully we can do that in the fall. For many years, as some of you likely know, we had in-kind rent, so we had the luxury of not having to pay rent. A couple of years ago, that changed. And the building that we're in, we got moved to by Comcast. Comcast is no longer in the building. We're there as tenants of Bill Buck. He's got the building up for sale and lease. And, frankly, market rates in Arlington are just prohibitive for something the size that we are. So we're looking to relocate. And we've had all sorts of interesting conversations. I wish I could tell you where I thought we were going to land, but I don't know. Every day it's different. We also have just hired a new CEO who begins next week. She brings a very exciting mix of journalism, community media, new business models. So we're very excited about what that can mean in terms of what comes next for AIM. Our longtime executive director, I'm sure many of you knew, Paul LaValle, resigned for health reasons back at the beginning of last year. We then had a reduction in force at the end of February, and then wham, COVID hit in March. So we've essentially been operating for the last year with just 2+ FTEs. We were fortunate to be able to secure 2 Small Business Administration PPP loans, the first of which was fully forgiven, which was great, and we're on track for that as well. And that's frankly made all the difference for us in terms of the year. And then, sort of all the way back, Gary and I serve on the volunteer grassroots board. We have 14 seats. 3 of them are appointed by the county board with input and advice from this body. So thank you very much. We serve for 3-year terms. It is very much a working board. It was really a working board this year. And the remainder of our members are elected by and from the membership. I would welcome your recommendations or interest in board service. And then just to sort of take a quick look ahead, we're actually really excited and interested in finding a way to expand our role in capacity as a capacity building hub for local nonprofits. We would love to see and find funding for a kind of a pool that would pay for training, production, and editing from which local nonprofits could draw to do projects that support their mission. We view ourselves as kind of a central feature that can then really support the well-being and success of other nonprofits, expand their storytelling, assist them in securing revenue streams like their videography for their virtual galas, etc. And also strengthening the connective tissue among the vital service committee providers in the county. In terms of finding additional funds, our strategy is to really work to engage wealthy local donors and corporations in helping area nonprofits do that work. And we've got an exciting partnership, among other things, coming with Marymount for a federal work study employment program, building on internships and other things that we've done there. So I'm going to take a deep breath and invite any questions. Gary, did I miss anything?
No, Linda, excellent presentation. I did just also want to chime in and say thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come and speak with you today, because we're so committed to engaging in a full-fledged partnership with the community and with the county, and we want to do everything we can to maximize and leverage the functions that we can offer to the community. One of the things we're hoping to engage in discussion this evening, if we could, would be to focus on the Tech Commission's area of concern, and I understand much of that has to do with emergency preparedness and security to the community. So if at some point we might be able to have some bit of dialogue or questions and answers, what is it that you folks are looking for? What are the factors that are important to you? What are you looking for in terms of what we might be able to offer as a broadcast radio station? What can we do to enhance the relationship that we have? What do we have on the table before us? What remains to be done going forward? What kind of opportunities are there that we can develop? I think some of the typical questions, Frank and I know about this going back our FCC days, for example, back with the Katrina hurricane, one of the things that came out and one of the lessons learned was that a lot of the infrastructure failed when it was most needed. We're talking about cell phone telecommunications, and no one was really prepared for that. It ended up being some of the issues were there was no backup power supplies, no resiliency, no reliability, and it turned out something like radio, something that people were saying, well, who listens to radio anymore? That was the only way you could get information. And here we are, we have a radio station. But of course, like any other facility, that is subject to its own kind of modes of failure too. So you'll want to make sure that you have the redundancy, the reliability, the resiliency. So this comes like around a big circle to kind of you guys, bailiwick. You're interested in having partners who can provide reliable communications during emergencies. We have a facility that is an important component of doing that. And we, for our purpose, and I think your purposes, could have a very good discussion about, what are the priorities? What do we need to do going forward?
Thanks so much, Lynn and Gary. I'll open it up to the commission members' questions. I'm not seeing anyone's hand yet, but this group has a tendency to, I'm sure. John?
Not so much a question, but I think just a comment. I just want to say that I don't think we're necessarily focused on the emergency management piece, although the how technology factors into that obviously is something we think about, and there's smarter people on this commission than me on that front. But you asked kind of feedback about what AIM could do, and I think one of the struggles that we've uncovered in this environment, this digital environment, and something that I think Arlington has been wrestling with for a while is how to bring the quote unquote Arlington way and community engagement into the 21st century, right? And I think all the things that you were talking about, Lynn, in terms of building local talent, in terms of production of content, into the local area could really add some depth to the bench, really, I think, in terms of that, because the board has been and the government has been producing kind of the wrap ups and the videos, and people are consuming video much more frequently, right? There's a really, the model for engagement at this point is I want to be able to go look at a summary of a thing and figure out how to dive deeper if I want to. But the production and the content, producing that content takes work, it takes effort, it takes talent, it takes skills. And so I think at the very least, having a capability facilitated by AIM to produce a more objective view of what's going on in the county government space for citizens to facilitate that engagement, I think would be an interesting area to explore. I've seen some of those productions on the PEG channels on Comcast or Verizon, and so I think that would be an area that I would be supportive of expanding on.
If I, Mary, may I respond
Sure,
to that? Because I think
absolutely.
actually you've identified something. I think that Samia Bird and with the county's new initiative on race and equity has also really spoken to kind of the challenges of the Arlington way, not necessarily tapping as representative an engagement as possible. And I think you're very right. And in fact, I was on a county board meeting just a couple of weeks ago, actually, and was thinking how interesting it would be to generate a program that was driven even by just the public comment section or whatever was sort of hot coming up on the county board's agenda for exactly that sort of distillation, kind of bringing a variety of voices into the table that aren't necessarily the loudest voices, but might actually be the most important voices. And as you say, that's a lot of work, but important work. And I think something we're kind of uniquely positioned to try to do.
And I also think it's really important because other media outlets that are commercial and profit driven are tending toward the sensational, right? And I think that is problematic for our society for a whole lot of reasons. So a nonprofit like AIM could be an antidote to that for people who are looking to stay informed, but react negatively to the sensationalism of other profit-driven media outlets.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Great. Any other comments, questions? I have a couple, but I'm going to hold them until I give other people an opportunity. Kevin? Whoop. Kevin? Oh, maybe he's talking to someone else. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Sorry,
Okay,
and
Kevin.
it's very brief. I just want to give a shout out as a proud alumni of AIM. I took classes back early 80s or whatever. You started early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. I just, been a big fan about the work you do and how you impact the community, and just very grateful for you all being here. And I wish you luck in the move or whatever happens in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. There are a lot of AIM alums in the community, I have discovered. It's really pretty cool, actually. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Phil, did you have a comment?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Phil, good to see you again.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Gary. We're overdue for a silver diner breakfast.
I know we've been impeded by COVID here. Once we're clear of that, I think we should remedy that situation again.
Yeah, because Phil served on the AIM board. And I have taken classes at AIM as well and was delighted, but was stopped by COVID. So we're all waiting. We're all waiting for the big opening. Question around what's first of all, what is the name of the CEO? Will you be releasing her?
Actually, if you all buy your tickets to the gala, you get to see her very briefly tomorrow night.
Excellent.
But we will obviously be doing an announcement. She starts on Monday.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not going to steal our own thunder.
Okay, no, that's
I'll just have to come to the gala.
Excellent. All right, that's wonderful. And Lynn and Gary, do you have a timeline? It sounds like now for this next year, you know what your budget and those things are going to be. Obviously, the big question is location. And I know you're looking at a lot of options. Is there a sense that you'll have a decision by December, or is your target earlier, or what's ideally when do you think you're going to be able to wrap things up?
This is a very fair question to which I wish we had a more clear answer, because we're not entirely in the driver's seat. This will really depend in part on whether Bill Buck is successful in finding a new tenant and whether that tenant is interested in our continuing to occupy some portion of the space or not. In our budget and planning, because we had to stick a stake in the ground somewhere, we thought, well, what we think we want to be doing is working towards being fully operational some other place. So that's assuming, first of all, we're likely paying more rent because we're not likely to get the deal that Bill Buck has given us for the last year by January.
Right.
And that, but again, we don't really know if we could stay with the deal that Bill has given us this year. We will, but it's not a long-term solution. We negotiated. We had a lease for a year that had a step down, guaranteed us 1 year after Comcast left, and then just went month to month, which really wasn't sustainable. So we renegotiated that, but it's only a 3-month term rolling, which is enough to kind of pack your bags and get out of Dodge, but isn't, it's not a long-term strategy. So we're actively looking, trying to move sooner rather than later. But we're not entirely in control of that timeline.
Okay, great, thanks. And I do think that there are rules in terms of, we're looking at the digital future of Arlington, right? And the next couple of months, this commission will spend a lot of time talking about that. So I do think that there's a role for AIM to help us get that word out in terms of the discussion about where the balance is and what's important in terms of the digital future for Arlington. So I think that's another story idea that I think would be
absolutely
would probably be aligning with what we're doing and what you all are doing. And so I'm most impressed, and I know, Lynn, I met you when you were volunteering, actually welcoming people to the door. So you've done it all from chair of board to being the welcoming committee as we walk through the door. So you really have done a great job, and Gary's a good talent scout. So we appreciate all the hard work that it's taken to keep AIM afloat through these really difficult times, and we look forward to getting updates, and we look forward to hopefully touring maybe the new location or your existing one.
Well, if we're still in the existing one, I want you to come there, and when we get to the new one, I want you to come see us in the new place. It won't feel like home till you guys come and visit. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Well,
really appreciate it. Well, our pleasure. And feel free to stay on, but you can exit now, whichever you prefer. We'll just go through our list. But thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right, take care.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, David, You are next up on the, you want to give us an update on county website and all things broadband probably too, right?
Probably more, yeah, more on the, let me start with the public website.
Excellent.
Yeah. So thank you to, I think, Bill and Kevin and anybody else who actually saw it on the website for participating in the tree test. We did 2 rounds of kind of public engagement for the public, for the refresh. Really, that's related to our information architecture. So what do you want to see on a page? How do you want this? What are your expectations to see for navigation? That was really what is going to help drive that whole information architecture. It's one piece of that. There's a lot of analytics that we're using behind the scenes, and we're kind of combining that together. So we've been working on all of that. So far, so good. We've also received our first 2 rounds of design and kind of gotten feedback. So we have a internal product owners group, which are a lot of the content holders and editors. And we kind of reviewed that with them, went back for another round with the company we've been working with, Open Cities. I have to say I like it a lot. It is going to be fairly hefty change from what we have. It's going to be a very service-oriented website, meaning we need to get you to the services that you wanted, whether that's to get mulch, is that to pay your bill, is that to find a job, things like that. Is it permits? Better and faster and more efficient. So more to come on that. We're looking still at probably a beta in August. That seems to be tracking pretty well for that, and then a release sometime this fall. So all that's still right on time with everything that's going on. So we're still dealing with COVID. The numbers are trending better in terms of vaccinations. We're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, not only from the DHS side, but on the technical side, we're still kind of a bit in crunch mode. I will happily say it has eased off. Any incremental easing off is a lot for us, given where DTS has been and the county has been and everybody's been for the last year and change. We have been able to kind of sit back and reflect a little bit on some of the stuff that we have done, and it kind of makes your eyes pop out of your head and go, wow, okay, how to jam 3 years worth of work in a year, if that's broadband, if it's digital response, all on down the line. So a lot of good progress on that, and I'll turn that over to Jack for any further comments. But if you have any questions on public website, please let me know. I'll just continue giving you guys briefings on that and progress on that as it goes along.
Thanks, David. And thanks to Phil, Kevin. There might have been some other people who answered the call to walk through. Really do appreciate it. Jack, did you have any comments, or do you want to wait until we're later on in the agenda?
I can certainly support David. I think he's right on target. I see Gary's still on, so Gary, thank you for all the work you've done at AAM, and Lynn's been fantastic. I know as we progressed, Mary and I have progressed the concept of a new world in terms of what Arlington might be in terms of digitalization. AIM's been there with us. The radio station was amazing. The work you guys did to provide us with a forum to be able to talk about what's possible. We certainly missed that, to be honest with you. It was quite an experience, and you guys were right there with us. And something as somebody said earlier, that we probably don't need the emergency management side of this. Yeah, they have no idea. 9/11, as you remember, when the Pentagon got attacked, you had no local news, zero, and it was folks like AAM that were putting out the word about what might happen. And I don't know where we are in terms of that relationship again, but when crisis happens, people want to know where do I go? How do I get shelter? And I think AAM did that for us. Another thing AAM did for us, I think, that really was significant is the cybersecurity side. Beverly Allen and the work she did. There's such a thirst today that it grows every day. How do I protect my password? How do I know what my damn password is? Because I wrote it down 5 times and I keep changing it. How do I assure that the calls I'm getting are not from Microsoft but somebody else, and I got to not give out my personal information. So I think you guys provide so many benefits to the community. It's been a challenge, and I personally feel bad about the fact that it came down to a budget decision. And frankly, it's not about budget. It's about what does the community mean to do, and what do you guys do to contribute that? And it's been fantastic. So thank you. If you could pass that on to Lynn, I didn't get a chance to talk to her. I know she dropped off for another reason, but that's all I wanted to say.
Jack, thank you so much. Really deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we will move on to legislative update, Frank.
Wow, in the middle of the meeting.
Yes.
I also wanted to thank Lynn and Gary for joining us this evening, and we did actually have the opportunity to review the agreement that WERA has with the county for emergency access, and I think we felt that it really served the county well, and would be an important asset to have should there be a crisis. We don't want any crisis, but should there be, that's a good way to get emergency information out. So but thanks again, Gary and Lynn. Did want to let's see, keep it fairly short. Our friends at Comcast have announced that they're going to invest $1 billion over the next 10 years to close the digital divide and reach up to 50 million low-income Americans, which will include additional support for the Comcast Lips Zone initiative, which establishes Wi-Fi connected safe spaces in over 1,000 community centers nationwide for students and adults by the end of 2021. And the Internet Essentials speed has been increased to 50 megabits per second, still for the low price of $9.95 per month. The FCC will soon accept applications for the second round of COVID-19 telehealth program. It's $249.95. Well, I don't know, they just rounded to $250 million. Anyhow, this is a reimbursement program, not a grant program. So applicants will be rated to prioritize hardest hit and low-income areas. The FCC continues its robocall enforcement efforts. The FCC has now asked major telecom companies to provide it with information regarding their robocall fighting efforts by April 30th. They are asked how they measure their strategies' effectiveness and how they prevent interference with emergency services. The FCC has a website now to help track these reports. So that will be my report for this month.
All right, thank you so much. I wanted to bring up the meeting minutes if you all had an opportunity to review, or would you like to postpone that till May? Any comments, suggestions, changes? Jonathan?
Yeah, I had a question for Frank. Sorry,
For Frank?
I didn't get a chance
Okay.
to get that
No,
in.
go ahead.
Yeah, Frank. The last bill in December put out $10 billion for the states for broadband, and I don't think the Treasury Department's issued regulations on that yet, but I don't know if is Virginia thinking about what they're going to do with that and how that might benefit us here in Arlington. That's a huge chunk of money going out to broadband in the states.
Yeah, I've not seen any further reports on how, what Virginia's plans are for that or what Arlington County's plans are at this point. But it's something, certainly, I think that hopefully, broadband seems to be certainly a big topic for the infrastructure proposals. And I think even on the bipartisan side, if we get a it sounds like there's a possibility we may get two different infrastructure tracks there, and I think the broadband part of it actually falls into the bridges and roads part. So I think we may see some additional attention and focus, but I haven't seen anything as far as how the $10 billion will be divvied up.
And Biden's proposing $100 billion that Senate Republican.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
65 billion, but we already have 10 billion in the bank. That, to put it in context, there was a lot of talk, and I helped to manage the Recovery Act funding in the 2009, 2010. That was a total of 7 billion, and here we already have 10 billion, but maybe 100 more to go. But even if we never get the 100 just on infrastructure bill, that 10 billion becomes all the more significant because it goes right to the states, and there's a lot of flexibility as to how it's going to be spent. So it'll be interesting to see what Virginia does, and if we have ideas, we've got to start thinking about it because it should come with fairly much as a blank check to the states. Be my guess.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's a good point, and one that we've talked about in terms of also the 130 billion coming to schools as well, right? There's a lot of technology associated with that. Jack, is there anything you're aware of that the state is putting together its favorite list?
You know, Jonathan hit it right on it, and you know, Mary, you and I have talked about this. This is a fire hose of money coming out, and we need to be proactive. We need to know it's coming down, be able to do it. The EBB, Frank, you know, and Jonathan, you know about that. Um, and that Lifeline, this is the whole thing about the E-rate, and you know, they've relaxed the regulations, so it's no longer a match, which is really good. And it's going to be distributed based upon formula, based on the number of Title One schools you may have. In Arlington, we were at about 49%. So great opportunity. Raj and I from schools are really we're doing the best we can to stay abreast of this, but it's happening fast. So the EBB actually is, if those are familiar with it, they're giving a $50 per residence allocation. And what that'll mean is you'll be able to use that for internet access. And it'll last at least until COVID is declined, it's decided to be over. And then when it's over, you get 6 months after that. My bet is it's going to go on for a long, much more than that. And so there's a great opportunity there. We were informed today that, frankly, applications are due Friday.
Applications are due Friday for
Friday,
EBB?
yeah, for some of the EBB money. And it's what it's going to be is is Jonathan and Frank know, there's a, that seems like a lot of money, but that goes fast. And people, and there's a fear that money would be you know, targeted and opted for. So we're really concerned about that. The governor, not the governor, the Arlington American Recovery Act, that the money that came through, 1.9 billion, they allocated. Mary and I talked about this. They allocated up to 10 earmarks per congressional representative. And you guys know that with earmark, that's very powerful. If you can bring the gravy home to the district, you're a hero. So you can name a post office after Frank, and you're carrying you're carrying a lot there. So that's there. That went through. That's on the table. So there's a lot of opportunities. And what Raj and I have been doing in schools is we really believe we can't just operate as we have in the past independently. We have to recognize that things he wants to do, I'm trying to support, vice versa. And how can we present a better picture if we're aligned, if we're saying this is something we ought to be doing together? So for what it's worth, I've challenged anyone and everybody who will listen that we gotta look at this funding source because you haven't seen anything yet. Okay, so we won't get what is it, $100 billion, but we're going to get close to that, Frank and Jonathan. And the question is, I mean, you guys are more politically savvy than I am, but I think you're going to get a chunk of that. And where are we in this whole mix? You know, and if we don't have you know, shovel ready projects ready to go, an idea of what we're going to do with it, then that money will go right by us. And I'm not saying that we're not better off than other counties in the state, in the country, but there's an opportunity here, and we ought to be aware of it. So I don't have any concrete thing to say that we've managed this any better, but I see the problem, and I think Mary, you and I have talked about it. This is a problem we got to address.
Just a question on that: is there any funding needs for the fiber that we have, or I mean, is there any money that would help us to light that up to low income communities? Or
Yeah, and you know how that works, Jonathan. It's a whole question of the you know, Dillon Rule State and where do we go on this. But there are ways around that. You know, I know Tim Dempsey's been pushing for Arlington Fiber. You know, a lot of the things we could do differently. Um, I just read a recent article talking about creating a gender neutral, agnostic approach to how we handle using fiber and wireless at the same time. And there's a lot of support behind that. And so that you get equal innovation. You're just not, the CLECs want to put the 5G, as you know, in the urban areas where there's a high density and money, they can make money off it. But what about those areas that aren't that so privileged? And how do we take care of them? So it's it's out there. The discussion's still taking place. I think the good thing is what we've been talking with schools about. We've moved the target from worrying about the unserved to the underserved.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good.
it's nice to say that, well, we gave somebody an internet connection and things are fine, but is that sufficient? To serve the home? And do we have an obligation? I don't have an answer to this, by the way. I have my own thoughts personally, but do we have an obligation to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity? And what does that mean?
Right. Equity and access. Yeah, because this has such a time sensitive note. Frank and I are scheduled to meet with TACUS, and this is going to be one of the things we raise in terms of, look, we want to make sure that we're being strategic and that we have a plan, right? Because I'm sure other communities have one. I just want to make sure that we're not at the end of the line. Right. I mean, and as somebody from out west said to me today, when we were talking about the underserved, said, well, if Arlington County can't do this, then who in the country can? Right. And so I said, well, good point. We're working it. But, they said, look, you all are the gold standard. So we look to you all to figure this out. So, Jack, I just wanted you to know you're infamous on the West Coast. That was my conversation today. So,
I have to tell you, Mary, I come from a big family, and I know when dinner's served, if you're not at the front of the line, you don't get
yeah,
to eat.
exactly. Exactly. Well,
Thank you,
great.
Mary.
Oh, thank you. We've got to get this, we got to focus on this agenda. Um, March minutes. Does anyone want to make if have you had an opportunity? And if not, because we know that due to technical difficulty, it didn't get out to you, and when we like to give you enough time. So either way, I will, whichever way you all want to go. If you want to adopt it, fine. If not, want to look it over and see if there's some changes you want to make, we can push it to our May agenda.
I suggest we wait.
Okay, that's fine. We'll put that on the May agenda. Thanks, Phil. John, would you like to give us an update on the Clarendon project, since you are our tech commission rep?
Sure. So let me get the name right because it's been referred to a couple different ways. The Safety and Innovation Zone Demonstration Project that we've been briefed on previously by Holly Hartel has formed a privacy and get the name right here too. The privacy oversight panel, which is essentially a governance board to pilot the county's privacy principles and privacy program in partnership and in collaboration with this demonstration project. We've had our first 2 meetings. The second one was earlier today. They are posted on the project website, which you can find by searching Safety and Innovation Zone Demonstration Project. And I'll post the link in the chat here just for the record. They are on Wednesdays at 11. We had 2 meetings starting off sorry, technical difficulties, copy paste. It's not really speak well of me. We had two meetings this first month to kick it off to review the charter and discuss some initial thoughts and feedback. And then we'll be meeting monthly afterwards. The charter is posted on that website, as well as a project FAQ. We spent the first 2 meetings kind of discussing the questions that we've had when Holly briefed us that we kind of still have. I had the opportunity to sit in on a briefing from Holly to the Clarendon Courthouse Civic Association. They had many of the same questions. And so, I've encouraged the county staff to get some answers to those types of questions, because I think they are predictable, and the answers that we have right now are not satisfactory in my view, nor did it seem like the Civic Association members were satisfied with the answers. So I think if we don't have good answers to those types of questions, doing these types of pilot projects will become harder and an outcome that I think we would support. I will say that there was, yeah.
What were some of the questions?
Some of the same questions that we've asked, in terms of it not really being clear why we're focused on this particular set of use cases. Some of the questions like, how can you explain to me that there is something called an optical sensor, but it's not a camera, that won't retain pictures or images? How is the data processed? Those types of questions, David, that we've raised before in our briefings, were raised by the community as well. So I think this commission is kind of in sync with what the community members who showed up to that Civic Association meeting were asking about, and I don't think they were satisfied by the answers that they got, as I don't think this commission was necessarily satisfied by the answers that we got at the time. So that's kind of on the docket to address. And there's one issue that I did want to raise for the commission's feedback on. As it was originally briefed, and I went back and watched the video for the county board approval of the project. And in the briefings to us and in briefings in the FAQ and in other places, it seemed as if, to me, that this was an experiment to see if we could generate data and indicators that could be used for these public safety use cases, but that they were not intended to be used operationally, to make operational decisions for fire and EMS type dispatch, or police public safety type dispatching and resourcing decisions. And I asked that as a clarifying question today, and that seemed to be not the case. It seemed to be that after a 3-month learning period, that the intent was to potentially create a dashboard that would go to the watch center, that may be used for operational decisions. And I expressed vocally there, and I'm bringing it up here again, that I think that's very dangerous, because at that point we are changing our emergency response based on machine learning algorithms that we don't really understand. We don't understand what the biases are. We don't understand what the false positives are, and that could result in a misallocation of emergency response services. It could have real life and health impacts in terms of most severely including potential death, right? Which is kind of the highest level of concern. And so I think it's okay to learn and to do pilot projects to learn, but generally speaking, you want to do that in a way that's very safe. And so I think it would be dangerous to start using those decisions before we fully understand this technology. And at this point, it doesn't seem like we do understand the technology and how it might be integrated. So I would want there to be more fulsome public engagement, or at the very least a policy decision made at higher levels than the project team about flipping that switch to go operational with this data.
John, clarifying question. After the end of that 3 months, isn't there a review and a report back before before it's folded into the operation? Or that was what you were clarifying, that it will just automatically fold into the operational toolkit?
So at this point, Mary, it's unclear, and I don't think this intent was was clearly understood, at least certainly not by me in the briefings that we've received. I don't think it came up during the board briefing. And so I just wanted to highlight that as something, and maybe everyone else here saw that and was okay with it, but I'm guessing that that's not the case.
Yeah, my recollection, of course, we can go back, but my recollection was it was going to be an opportunity to look and learn, right?
Right.
And then there would be a collective report and then an opportunity to figure out, all right, what's the next step? I didn't think it was a seamless, automatic, we do the 3 months and then we move into the operational. So that's, yeah, that's something that I think I just want clarity around. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's a little nebulous at this point,
Right.
Mary,
Okay.
which I think is the
Right.
problem, right? It's like I said, learning is good, doing these pilots is good. You know, we talked a lot about risk and risk management in these types of situations, and part of risk is the impact if something goes wrong, right? And if something goes wrong with a pilot project that's not connected to anything, it's no big deal, right?
Right.
But if something goes wrong with the miss dispatch of emergency services and emergency responders, something could go very wrong. And so I think we should go very, very slow in terms of thinking about incorporating this kind of technology into our operations, because I don't think we understand it well enough.
Okay. So John, keep us posted. Thank you. That's
If I
really
may,
helpful.
Mary,
Yeah, Jack, do you want to comment?
I think John brings up some valid points, and that's part of the deliberative process of the group we put together. We want them to raise uncomfortable discussions to some, but to raise them and then have a consideration by the entire group. Frankly, I have not been briefed on what the group's been doing because I want to hear what they have to come up with in terms of the recommendations. But that's the whole idea behind this. This is, you know, I don't disagree or agree with everything John said, but I think it has to go through that process. And we get some top-notch people on this group, and you know, they'll come up with a conclusion that we can look at and review and say, okay, do we agree or do we not agree? But we don't know
Jack,
yet.
To be fair to your team, this came up at about 11:45 a.m. today, so I'm sure they're taking it and they're looking at it.
Yeah.
And it just, we only have our commission meetings once a month, so I wanted to raise that here as well.
You know, my main concern, if you're not being listened to, you know, everybody's saying that's nice, thumbs down, we're going, then that's not good. But if they're being listened to, that's the whole idea. We want to hear you should challenge. This is the whole thing about question storming. You know, do we not agree? Why not? And what do you say to maybe make this work better? But that's where I stand right now, and I know that's where Mark is as well, Mark Schwartz.
Yeah, and I will say that the team is looking at using the NIST frameworks, which is the gold standard. And so we've got some work ahead of us, and I think we're headed in the right direction in terms of privacy controls and privacy governance. But that transition to operational uses was concerning to me.
I think Kevin's on the call. Kevin, I don't know if you want to. Kevin's part of the commission, isn't he? Kevin Broadhurst. Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I am, Jack, and I was on the privacy call this morning too, and to your point, it's kind of why we created the privacy committee. I'm an observer, I guess, but to have these conversations, and it's not so much a lack of preparation on Holly's part or anything like that. We're kind of all studying this and going to learn from this. It's really the whole point of a pilot, and so there's no. I think we're kind of going about it the right way. I think the committee is going about it the right way by reaching out to the stakeholders involved, but I really don't think it's anything to do that Holly was unprepared for or anything like that. It's just, this is all part of the process of learning what to do with this stuff.
Yeah, I would agree completely, Kevin.
Yeah, I think the only question, Kevin, if you or Jack want to address, is the automatic seamless moving from the 3 months into operations. I mean, that doesn't see, that wasn't my understanding. My understanding was we're going to learn from this, we're going to think about it, and then have some conversation about where we go next. So it wasn't an automatic move, and that's concerning.
That was my real concern, is that I don't think that intent was clear in the briefings that I had seen up until that point. So I just wanted to highlight that for folks.
Right. Is there someone else has a, let me see who else has a question on. I see a hand raised here.
I have a hand.
David.
Yes.
Go ahead.
One of the points I raised when this came up was the importance of community feedback and engagement for many of the same reasons that John has alluded to and brought up. One of the issues that I really wanted to talk about was, has this been briefed to the Civic Federation, and or are there plans to brief it to the Civic Federation, and has that been done? And if not, why not?
So David, I'll say that Holly is pounding the pavement in terms of engaging with as many groups as she can get on the calendars for. It's people have to say yes to allowing her to show up, and she's being totally transparent with the privacy oversight panel in those engagements, and allowing us and inviting us to participate and observe those engagements.
So
I don't have anything for the Civic Federation on the list yet, but I don't think that's because it's not planned. I just think it's because it's not scheduled.
I just want to reiterate that I think they're a really important stakeholder, because the Civic Federation communicates with all the civic organizations, and so it's a more important stakeholder than just a regular civic association, because that's a convening group that then can help you get on the agenda with others if that's needed. And so obviously the Civic Association, where the pilot's located, is crucially important, but the Civic Federation will give you broader input and discussion, and they often have a different sort of vantage point than just an ordinary civic association. So I want to reiterate again, and I appreciate your answer. That makes a lot of sense. I just want to reiterate for the sake of everyone that I think this is super important. The Civic Federation would be a very helpful partner. And they, in addition to this group, they should even be briefing your oversight group separately and being brought in as observer or stakeholder or something like that. There may be organizational refinements that are possible.
So I took a note, David, and I will be sure to raise that with Holly and the project team, and keep an eye on it.
Wonderful. Thanks for being there and keeping an eye out.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Thanks, David. Now we're going to move to the new Urbana report. And Jonathan, to your point, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the feasibility study, it outlines what some of the price price tags are for the different routes that Jack and his team could take in order to deliver to the underserved. I had a couple of questions after reviewing the report, but David, I wanted you and Jack to have an opportunity just to give us where this stands at the moment in terms of, you've had an opportunity to look at the feasibility study, where you are, and kind of timeline of where you're going, and then if we can open it up for questions. And I certainly have a couple just clarifying questions, but you might answer with your opening. So thanks.
I don't know who's taking the lead. David, are you taking the lead? Or you want me to take the lead?
I think if you could.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I mean, you saw the feasibility report. It lays out the cost and the technical. I think to some degree the technical approach that they want to take there. The real question is technology adoption, and that's that end user support, and what does that look like? And we've surveyed many cities across the country and what they do. Some just basically just turn on the internet broadband access and say, go at it. You figure out how to get to Netflix and how you get Disney Channel and all that. Others have somebody can help you, channel support, surfing support. So they presented the goal is, of course, to survey in this one case, Gates of Boston, which is in Arlington Terrace View, with internet access. Then again, back to what we said earlier, it's more than just the unserved, it's the underserved. And how do we create an environment that's measurable? The manager's concern, quite honestly, is it's money. It's there's an upfront cost for infrastructure, and then on top of that, there's an ongoing cost for support. And you got to, and this becomes a model. If this is the model, then you've got other localities across the county that
scale it.
scale it. They're going to want to jump in line. And how do I get that? There's some areas along Columbia Pike which are really in much poorer conditions than Gates of Balsam. So he's challenged that. I know Kevin and I have talked. Kevin Broadhurst was on the phone call, and I think Kevin's looking at an assessment of what the model might be if Comcast did it. If Comcast provided sort of a white glove service and provided the access they wanted at the speeds they wanted, what would that look like? Kevin's and I still in the process of working on it, so we haven't seen that yet. But the manager he is he wants to be able to evaluate all the alternatives and say, okay, what's the road forward? What's the roadmap? And I've been pushing the concept of the neighborhood conservation plan that the CPHD does. Where neighborhood says, hey, this needs to be not. Can you get the sidewalks done a different way? Can you put the crosswalks here? Can you do this? This is totally different, but it's getting that concept of there's a real need here. How many residents are needed that don't have the access? How many students do we have here that could get the access? And it's maybe that's the way we pursue this forward and have a normalized approach to how we fund these things. But there's across the board, as you might know from the board, is that it's really critical that we start looking at how do we provide services to everyone in the community. That's like we have electricity. We wouldn't hesitate if someone told you we got this a great apartment over here. We need to get access, and by the way, there's no electricity. You say that's nice. I'm not going there. So we should have the same approach to what we're doing with broadband. So we're still going down the road. Nothing's been decided yet. We know numbers, somewhat numbers. We don't know the full benefit. We know there's been a sea change that's taken place that I know some nonprofits, Arlington Public, APA, has really gone after the fact that they now believe that they shouldn't build a new residence unless it has affordable broadband at the speeds they want. And they're willing to invest in it.
Good.
And Nina Giannopoli met with me not too long ago, and she said, no. She said, we see the light. We've got to invest. And so we got to guarantee that the folks who are in these places have the underserved have equal access as we have at home. So that sea change has taken place. I was talking to the state the other day, and they see the same thing taken at the state level. There's a recognition that we need to have this, and as Frank said with the Biden bill and Jonathan, I mean that recognition that 5 years we're going to have broadband access for everyone in the country. Can we do that? Well, we're going to find out because
we are.
Right.
The other thing to add, Jack, is next in May, in addition to the former Baltimore CIO, which you have been kindly being the conduit for that, we have the housing commissioner. So my counterpart from the Housing Commission for Arlington will brief us because in my conversations with him, I really wanted 1 gig up and 1 gig down. I know that's far, far, far above what's in the FCC floor, but if we're going to do it, why don't we look at doing it, right? I mean, I'm
with you.
I just feel like why, it's kind of like the national airport, they built it and now we're already too big for it, right? So, I just feel like let's take the leap that we need to take. Jonathan, to your point, I mean, are these some of the things that you have the numbers for this, Jack? Are these some of the things that can get connected? I mean, here we have a pot of money that the federal government has said, look, we want communities to support broadband. Is this something that, or how do we find out if this is something that would fall or align with the requirements and the intent of that money?
Well, Congress was pretty vague about what could be done with the money, and they gave it to the Treasury Department, which is fairly unusual because they don't normally handle this kind of thing. Basically, just to distribute it to states based on a formula. So we're not expecting a lot of strings in it. So it may be flexible enough to use for that purpose. So should they, Jack? I mean, or Frank? I mean, it's like one sentence in the bill. And Senator Warren, by the way, was a key player in getting this done.
He was, yes.
Find out how we do it here in Virginia.
So maybe the next step is just to contact Warner's office and find out what they're going to do with when they transfer to the state of Virginia, and say, we've already got plans for broadband to the underserved. What do you think? We could be a pilot, right?
Yeah, I think you'd be really interested in discussing that.
Okay. Well, let's because I mean, let's just get in line. I mean, I mean, why sit here? You had a feasibility study since December here. We know that it's critical. So let's just find out. And it's not county money. I mean, we could be a pilot for the country, for goodness sake. Any other thoughts on that before we move to some of the questions that we might have about the actual study? Anything? Anyone have any questions specifically about the study that Jack or David could field? While you all are thinking, Jack, I wanted clarity around, you know how it said 4 months, it was giving some, when would that clock start? Would it be your understanding that the board would have to direct the county manager to implement, execute, and then that's when the 4 months would start? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense
I
about
wish I
what
could.
the
Yeah,
timeline is.
I can't give it clarity. I mean, it's certainly a procurement issue, and I don't know. But I would hope. I mean, just to ramp up something like that. I mean, it involves all kinds of things: laying infrastructure, getting a bulk internet provider to provide that access, and negotiating that. I mean, if I was to go call up Crown Castle this afternoon and tonight and say I'd like you to set up, the best they could do would be 45 days. So it gives you a perspective of
An
what
idea.
we're dealing, an idea of what we're dealing with, and you got to get buy-in. I mean, the EBB is based on getting families to qualify, and they got to apply, and but it's $50 a month, and it addresses the capex and the opex aspects of this, and then they're doing the ROI models to determine, what works. What is it? Full service? Is it white glove service? Is it something less than that? So still a lot more to be decided upon. I think the manager's been certainly consumed by COVID and the budget crisis, but I think we're coming out of it now, and coming out in terms of the events that have been taking place. That's what I keep arguing for, and I know I'm a nuisance because I keep asking the questions. Have we thought about this? Have we?
Well, these are windows of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are windows of opportunity. I also like the ambassador.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's really that could give skill sets to people who might not even think of themselves as tech, right?
That's something that I know the fiber industry and 5G industry has pointed out, that there's a real shortage of people who understand fiber and 5G.
Right.
I'll have to tell you, my guys are being called daily by other jurisdictions saying, hey, what are you making? Are you interested in moving? And they're great. They're long tooth. In other words, they've got long experience in Verizon, AT&T. They know how to make it happen. And, they're staying because they're loyal to the county, but, that could change rapidly, And so we have to realize that we're in competition with a lot of people who see the opportunity to really change the way we're working.
And also, it's a jobs program.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be. I mean, Jonathan, this is similar to what you all are doing with internships and building capability in the wireless arena, correct?
Yeah, we have apprenticeships that employers can engage in. We talked to Jack a while ago. It's not quite for the county, but for employers to sort of train people to become techs in wireless deployment and also broadband fiber. And we're trying to get underserved communities to get more involved in our industry and increase participation in the industry. It's fairly white male dominated, and we're trying to change that and use the opportunity of apprenticeships to make that different.
Yeah, this just has, I mean, yeah. So I think we just need to move. And do some things. Yes, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
There's so many JBs here. Go for it. JB1, JB2. Go for it.
I'm just wondering how many housing units we're talking about at the gates of Boston and Arlington Terrace View.
45. Is that right?
405 units.
405. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, yeah. Yeah.
And we think that's a lot, John. You know, we think that's a lot, but you know, you go down. I was visiting an area down the other end of Columbia Pike. They got 550.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
I don't think it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I just where did the what budget line item did the funding for this study come out of? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I think it's probably a personal. You know, the manager has a fund, contingency fund he can reach back in. There was no stated item for it that I know of, and I know that's you know, to fund this long term, you need Kevin and I have talked about, is there money existing? There is no identified source of funding going forward at this point.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. That's any other questions, comments before we move on?
I have comments, but I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Comments?
There's nothing in my mind particularly problematic with the report, but I think it highlights kind of the things that we've been talking about here in terms of the overall need for digital planning, because funding this type of analysis ad hoc for 405 housing units in a community of 230,000 people that's growing every day, I think is not a recipe for success over the long term. And so I think this and the pilot project kind of, it strikes me as a bit ad hoc, and not that any one particular project is bad or that the people who are executing them are not top-notch and hardworking and mission-oriented and community servants, which they all are. But we are failing them without providing that overarching policy guidance, in my view,
framework,
so that they can execute with the same passion and vigor and talent that they do every day. And so I just think this highlights in my mind that need for that larger planning effort. That's all.
Thanks, John. And of course, that will be our focus in May. Actually, there are 3 parts to May. Let me just tee this up so you all. One is Jack has reached out to the former CIO of Baltimore, and you remember that they had an unfortunate cyber incident and he's certainly willing to talk to us about that, so we have a better understanding of how we can prepare. And then secondly, I mentioned the housing commissioner, my counterpart, will come because I really want to talk about how we together talk about this issue around digital, high-speed internet. And then third, you all have now Mike's report and the report of the task force for the county manager. So I want to make sure everybody looks at that and we have a conversation about moving forward with the digital future that John just mentioned, in terms of having a digital framework, and think about whether it's part of the comprehensive, we recommend it's part of the comprehensive plan, or we think about what are the best ways to make sure that we have a digital plan, particularly given the money that is being made available. For us to be strategic, we have to know what we want and what's going to serve the community best. And I think that whole planning piece is one that I think collectively on this commission in particular we've talked about a lot. So that will be those are going to be the three areas for May. Any final comments, questions? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Neutral? All right. Oh, this may be a record. Wow, we're actually 10 minutes early. So we'll see you next. We'll see you in May. Really, will be obviously a full agenda. And thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Gary, thanks for hanging in there with us.
Yep.
The whole time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. You take care. Bye, everybody.
Good night, all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.